Good day, grade 11s. Now, in the last lesson, we looked at viruses, right? Viruses and its non-living organisms, both as non-living and living organisms. They're considered living when they are in their host cell and non-living when they are outside their host cell. Meaning that, why do we call them non-living? Because they don't have the ability to reproduce on their own and make their own energy and so forth and so forth. You understand? So yes, those were viruses. And viruses, why are they scientifically important? Because they cause diseases such as HIV and AIDS, the recent COVID-19, and so forth. Right. Still on the classification of microorganisms. Now we look at live microorganisms, bacteria. So we're going to be looking at bacteria. Now, let's quickly summarize what we're going to be looking at. I like mind maps. They tell us where we're going to be looking at. What are we going to be looking at? First things first, classification, right? The classification of bacteria. Basically, where do bacteria come from? We looked at, when I first introduced this topic, I told you that we have different kingdoms. They are found in the kingdom Monera. So that's what we're going to be looking at. And then from there, we will look at the structure. Look at the structure of bacteria. The structure of bacteria and how bacteria is different from other microorganisms, right? And then while we're looking at the structure, let's look at the shapes. It's part of the structure actually, but I'm going to put it aside. The shapes, the different shapes of bacteria, right? Good. Now, after we look at the different shapes, we're going to be looking at the mode of nutrition. What do I mean by mode of nutrition? How bacteria feed. They practically feed using two main modes of feeding, meaning some are auto means they could do it themselves, trophic, meaning they can make their own food, and some are heterotrophic, meaning they cannot make their own food. For example, you get to see that some are photosynthetic, and some will be chemosynthetic. Photosynthetic meaning photo means light. They use light to make their own food, similar to plants. And then some bacteria use chemicals to manufacture their own food, right? Then heterotrophic ones, we'll be looking at things such as mutualistic bacteria. We'll be looking at saprotrophic bacteria that play a role in decomposition in nature, or in nature basically. Then some are parasitic. Those are the ones that we'll get to see that they are actually pathogenic. What is pathogenic? What does pathogenic mean? Is that they are disease causing. Any microorganisms that are disease causing, they are known as pathogenic. Pathogenic means disease causing microorganism. So the ones that are mutualistic, basically they don't cause disease, so we can't say that they are pathogenic. After that, we will quickly look at the way in which it reproduces, reproduction of bacteria, and lastly some of the diseases that are caused by bacteria. I think that from a summary point of view, that is all. We can get right straight into the thick of things as to what is bacteria, where does it come from, and so forth and so forth. Right, let us start. Just like we summarized, we said we were going to start with classification. Bacteria fall under the kingdom Monera. Kingdom Monera, just like we looked in the last lesson, the kingdom Monera have the following characteristics. They have no true nucleus, meaning no membrane-bound nucleus and special organelles, right? So that is known as what? They are known as prokaryotes. Ne? They are prokaryotic organisms, meaning the organisms where the nuclear material is not enclosed in the membrane, meaning the DNA. You don't find it in the membrane. So that is their classification. No membrane bound. And all of them are unicellular microorganisms, right? They are unicellular, meaning they are made up of only one cell. The whole organism is just that one cell. Imagine you started as one cell and you multiplied into a lot of cells. It ends it there at one cell. Great. We looked at the classification of bacteria. Now let's go into the second part. The structure of bacteria. The structure of bacteria. So what is the actual structure of a bacteria? How is it made? Good. First things first, if I draw this, let's put a proper heading here. Structure of a bacterial cell. Bacteria. Good. The general structure of a bacteria is that it will have on the outside. Let's start on the outside. Let's use a different color for this one. I like different color. I think when you hear the word slime, for me when I hear slime, I automatically think of the color yellow. It has a slime just outside the cell. Slime, huge slime. Good. Now, let's start with that slime. It has a slime layer. Now, the slime layer basically is to protect the bacteria from drying out. Ne? So it protects bacteria from drying out. The mucus-like layer, it's called a slime layer. Protects it from drying out, and then obviously it will have a cell wall. We all know the cell wall is used to protect the whole cell. So it has a cell wall, and then after a cell wall, it will have a cell membrane. So there's many layers of, let's use a different color for this one. Let's say this is the cell membrane. Step by step, we will get there. Cell membrane. Just like any other cell membrane, it controls all what the traffic, basically what goes in and out of the cell. Obviously, if it has a cell membrane, it will have that cell membrane surrounds what? The cytoplasm. The whole cytoplasm is contained in there, right? Good. Since it can make its proteins, it will have these subunits that make proteins. Those will be your, excuse me, my lines are crossing, and I said people should not have lines that are crossing. So it will have your ribosomes. So it has ribosomes. There's one thing we didn't discuss. Let me put it here. Now, in the center of it all, in the center of all of this, it will have a place called the nucleoid. The nucleoid is this whole place over here. Is this whole place over here. Now the nucleoid, remember in a virus, we have the nucleic acid core because there's no nucleus. Still in bacteria, there's no nucleus. There's no membrane-bound, organelle or membrane-bound DNA. So where you find the DNA inside a bacteria, it's called the nucleoid, not the nucleic acid core. So please make sure you know the difference if you are asked to differentiate between a bacteria and a virus, right? Good. So one of the things that, excuse me, one of the things that we find bacteria heavy is these. It will have these other little appendages. Now those appendages are known as flagellum. Flagellum. One flagellum, many flagella. Now, flagellum, have you ever seen a sperm cell? A sperm cell looks something like this, ne? And they don't have a tail. What does it use that little tail of it for? It uses it for locomotion, for moving. So flagellum, it's similar to that. So please don't call it a sperm tail. It's not a sperm tail. I was just making an example. So flagellum are used for locomotion, movement by bacteria. Some bacteria, although it won't show right now, they tend to have these hair-like structures, a lot of them. That depends on the bacteria. Some, not all. Those hair-like structures will be called cilia. But these are the common structures that you find in a bacterial cell. So that is the general shape of a the general structure of a bacterial cell. Right. So you need to know all of these. Slime layer protects it from drying out. Cell wall protects the cell. Cell membrane basically, controls what goes in and out of the cell. Cytoplasm, where all activities happen. Ribosomes for making its own proteins. And then the nucleus, where you find all of the DNA. And then flagellum for movement. Not just for cilia for movement or attachment to other cells or surfaces. So that is your bacteria. Right. And then, so let me see. Did I forget anything? I don't think so. Good. Now let's go and look at the shapes. We said we were going to look at the shapes. Still on the structure. The shapes. So bacteria are how do I put it? Let me download my English bundles. We have a variety of these bacterial cells, right? And they come in different shapes and sizes, similar to how, for example, human beings come in different shapes, sizes, colors, and whatever. Bacteria has a large enough biodiversity, right? Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Good. So let's start with the cocky. Since I like drawing, I always draw next to this word. Cocky, how do I remember it? Cocky, they look like this. Those are the cocky ones. Cocky bacteria, how are they shaped? Basically, or coccus. For example, Staphylococcus aureus. They are shaped, they are sphericals, they are spheres. Sphere is a circle. That's a sphere. So that is the first one. The second one is bacillus or bacilli. Bacilla. Now, how are they shaped? Bacilli are rod shaped, meaning we say that they are rod shaped. What is a rod? A rod is something that looks like this. They are rods, similar to your pen. Some come paired, and so forth. So these are rod-shaped bacteria, your bacillus, like your streptococcus, and so forth. Then the other one are spirally. This one is simple to remember, man. Spirally, they are spiral shapes. They are spiral shape. When you say something spiral, it looks something like this. Yeah, like a spring, basically. And then which ones would you have? Vibrio. Vibrio, number 4. Vibrios, if I remember correctly. Vibrios. So vibrios are those ones, basically they're comma shaped. Comma. It's comma with a double, yeah. Let's do double M. Comma, yes. Comma shaped. Now, what is a comma? A comma, like a simple comma. But obviously they don't look like this. They look something like this. And then they'll have, yeah, that's how the bacteria will actually look. So these are the different shapes of bacteria. So for example, these questions like showing up in multiple choice questions. Your section A, basically, they'll give you a question saying the name of a shape where the bacteria is spherical, for example, and then you have to say it is corky, right? Great. So that concludes our shapes. So we've done the structure, the shapes. We've looked at the classification of these bacteria. Now, let me erase. Let's quickly look at the mode of nutrition. The mode of nutrition. What do I mean by the mode of nutrition? Mode of nutrition is how they really feed, for example. How they feed. Everybody's got to eat here. So, how do bacteria eat? Obviously, they don't have a mouth to eat. Yes, they don't have a mouth to eat. Most bacteria, they basically they can either take in, bacteria don't take in. Okay, let's just leave it there. Let's look at it like this. They have two modes of feeding. The first one is an autotrophic mode of feeding, right? And the second one is a heterotrophic mode of feeding. What is autotrophic? Meaning organisms that can make their own food. Heterotrophic, organisms that cannot, like absolutely they cannot make their own food, right? So these are organisms that cannot make their own food. So what are examples? Let's leave it like that. What are examples of these heterotrophic and autotrophic bacteria? Right. So let's look at different types. Right. We have photosynthetic, bacteria and chemosynthetic bacteria. So, what are photosynthetic bacteria and what are chemosynthetic bacteria? Photosynthetic bacteria use photo meaning light, similar to plants, to make their own food. So they photosynthesize, meaning they have chloroplast. Chemosynthetic get their energy from chemical process. They use chemicals to make their own food. Now, what about your heterotrophic organisms? Now, there's several of them. Now, heterotrophic bacteria can either feed in the following way. They can either be parasitic. Most of them are, like I said, are pathogenic, meaning they cause diseases. What is parasitic? Meaning they get to benefit, and then the host does not get to benefit, like TB, for example, right? Tuberculosis. And then, number two, saprotrophic. Now, these are one of the most important ones, the saprotrophic bacteria, meaning they play a role as decomposers. And what are saprotrophic? What is a saprotroph? Meaning that they feed on dead, decaying material, dead organic material, right? So they are decomposers. Basically, that's the definition for decomposers, feeding on dead organic material. So they play a very important role in nature as decomposers, these bacteria, heterotrophic bacteria. And then there are mutualistic bacteria. Mutualistic meaning what? What is mutualistic? Is a symbiotic relationship whereby both organisms benefit from each other. Wanenega nagonega. Great. So how a good example of this, if you remember, would be your legume. Remember grade 10 you did legume plants, you did this. Your legume plants, and legume plants had a relationship with nitrogen fixing bacteria. Your nitrogen fixing bacteria. What was the relationship? Now, legume plants have things such as food, such as sugars, and then bacteria will fix nitrogen, meaning they'll convert nitrogen gas into nitrates. So they feed plants the nitrates so that plants use the nitrates to make proteins. And then as a result, the nitrogen fixing bacteria get food like sugars, because plants make food in the form of glucose and starch. So they get that from the plant, and then the plant gets it gets nitrates. All in all, everybody benefits, right? Good. So those are the types of heterotrophic bacteria. They are most likely they're going to ask you a lot on these ones, heterotrophic bacteria, right? So make sure that you understand what we mean when we say heterotrophic bacteria. There are the parasitic ones, which mostly cause diseases, saprotrophic ones, which are decomposers, and then mutualistic ones. And you should be able to give an example with legume plants and nitrogen fixing bacteria. But not just legume plants and nitrogen fixing bacteria. Remember that in your gut, you've got bacteria. What is that? Your Escherichia coli, your E. coli. Now, what is the relationship there? E. coli is similar to nitrogen fixing bacteria, get food from you as a human being. And then what do they give you? They give you vitamins. So in return, they give you vitamins. So that is your gut bacteria. You have a mutualistic relationship with your E. coli, or the gut bacteria that is inside you. So that's basically the types of mutualistic relationships you get with bacteria. So that is the mode of feeding. Now, our next stop is reproduction. How do bacteria reproduce? I mean, if they need to have a lineage, so how do they reproduce? Now, bacteria can reproduce asexually by a process known as binary fission. Now, with this process, remember, bacteria can reproduce almost every 30 minutes. So it's a very fast process. Ne? Good. So under ideal conditions, warm, moist, and there's a lot of food, bacteria will replicate very quickly by process of binary fission. What do we mean by binary fission? Meaning if you have one bacteria over here, and then it will basically make a copy of itself via the process of mitosis. DNA is copied, and then the DNA is going to be copied into the next bacteria. Then you have two bacteria. Then the next 30 minutes, we copy another DNA in interface, and then we have two more. We have 4 bacteria now. So it's exponential growth for bacteria. It's the process of mitosis, basically. So they reproduce by a binary fission, which is practically just mitosis. Great. And then, lastly, let's look at the diseases that they cause. Or the disorders that they cause. What are the diseases caused by bacteria? I think for some time now, we know of tuberculosis, Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Let's spell Mycobacterium scientific name, tuberculosis. It is a scientific name, so therefore we underline it. Good. Mycobacterium tuberculosis, it is caused by it is a bacteria that causes TB, which is tuberculosis. Symptoms of TB, we know, coughing up blood. It basically attacks the lungs. That's why you cough out some blood, right? Losing weight, loss of appetite, urinating a lot, sweating at night, and then you don't drink water, or drinking a lot of water, thirst, basically. Yeah, that's the one. That was the symptoms of TB. Why do I tackle TB? Because TB is a common one. It's one of the biggest disorders or diseases that we have of lately. So it is caused by a bacteria, and that's why it is so dangerous, because it replicates quickly. It has medication that you must take. They give you antibiotics. So they'll give you antibiotics. And remember, antibiotics only work on bacteria. Strong antibiotics, special for killing this tuberculosis, Mycobacterium tuberculosis. And then you must finish. I think it's a 6 months course. If you don't finish it, you must you must get more medicine that will basically take longer, like a year and some months or a whole year. So best you finish the course. Remember, while we're here, antibiotics only work on bacteria, not virus. If I gave you antibiotics and you have flu, that's a viral infection. Those will not work on what? On bacteria. So what are the other disorders that might be caused by bacteria? For example, some STIs might be caused by bacteria, and then such a urinary tract infection. So those are some of the disorders caused by bacteria. Good. I think that concludes our lesson on bacteria. So quickly, let's just summarize what we just done now, looking at the notes here that I prepared. Great. So first and foremost, we started looking at bacteria and classifying it. Bacteria is classified under the kingdom Monera because it is a prokaryote. It is prokaryotic, meaning it doesn't have a membrane-bound nucleus. Bacteria is found everywhere, basically, and it prefers oxygen-rich environment. So they are aerobic bacteria. Good. Then some prefer the absence of oxygen. Those are anaerobic bacteria. Then there are small living organisms, but they are larger. Remember, they are larger than a virus. That is the one thing you must always know, that they are larger than a virus. They are unicellular, and then they have different shapes: your coccus, bacillus, spirillum, and vibrio. Your coccus is your spheres, and then these ones are the comas. The vibrio is the comas, spirally is the spiral that looks like a spring, and then bacillus is the rod shaped. Then it has a cell wall present. The cell wall is to protect the whole cell, slime capsule, protect it from drying out, cytoplasm, and a cell membrane. Good. They do have DNA, basically, and it's contained in a place called the nucleoid, not the nucleic acid core. The nucleic acid core, excuse me, the nucleic acid core is for viruses. Then bacteria, structure of a bacteria, they typically look like this. This is a micrograph of a bacteria. See all the flagella over here. What if they give you this diagram in a test? You're going to have to label what you see. You can see as a part of the slime capsule and the cell wall, and then the rest, you really can't see. So basically, a structure like this will be present. If they give you this one, you must be able to label it and give the functions of some of the structures we discussed. Mode of nutrition, they are autotrophic and they are heterotrophic. Autotrophic include photosynthetic and chemosynthetic bacteria. Photosynthetic bacteria use light to make their own food, that is photosynthesis. Chemosynthetic, meaning they obtain their energy via they'll obtain their energy via chemical reactions. The heterotrophic, these ones now are similar to they are heterotrophic, not similar. They are heterotrophic bacteria. Types of them include parasitic. They can cause diseases, meaning they are pathogenic. They are pathogens. They benefit and the host does not benefit, such as TB and the likes. Then some are saprotrophic. Basically, these are your decomposers. Very important. We need decomposers in nature. Some are mutualistic, such as gut bacteria. Remember, they might ask you to basically explain. the relationship, the mutualistic relationship of bacteria and other organisms. You're going to talk about gut bacteria, the gut bacteria, aka your E. coli, which gives humans, for example, vitamins, and then they get in return food. Similarly, your nitrogen fixing bacteria provide nitrates to plants, and then plants get no, they provide your plants with nitrates, and then plants provide them with food. Then we looked at bacterial diseases. Then we looked at TB. I did not give notes on TB, but you should be able to understand it studying it from your textbook. And then do activity 1.1.2 in your textbook to test yourself if you've understood this. So this activity is mainly for understanding life sciences, activity 1.1.2. If your school has a different prescribed textbook, please use that textbook and its activities. Good. In the next video, we'll be looking at the kingdom protists, your protists. So this concludes our lesson on bacteria as microorganisms.